Good evening, everybody. The House Oversight Committee has found Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt of Congress for his refusal to turn over subpoenaed documents pertaining to the committee's investigation of Operation Fast and Furious. The party line vote now moves the resolution to a vote of the full House of Representatives. That's scheduled for next week. A last-minute White House assertion of executive privilege was apparently intended to prevent the committee's vote on the criminal contempt charge. It hardly slowed the process.
The ayes have it, and a contempt report is reported to the House.
Unless the Attorney General does satisfy the demands of the House Oversight Committee, the full House of Representatives will vote on whether to hold Attorney General Eric Holder in criminal contempt of Congress next week, before then turning the charge over to a U.S. attorney for prosecution and trial. A number of Democrats on the committee seemed upset that Chairman Issa would proceed with the contempt of Congress vote. Apparently, they expected a postponement after the president invoked executive privilege for the first time, by the way, in his administration. South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy, one of the lead investigators into Operation Fast and Furious, and already frustrated by the slow pace of the investigation and what he sees as the administration's stonewalling, was incensed by the assertion of executive privilege and what the administration might be hiding.
If he did not know about Fast and Furious before Brian Terry was murdered, if he did not approve of the wiretap applications, then what in the world is he asserting executive privilege for? He's either part of it or he's not. If he's part of it, then we've had a series of witnesses that have misled this committee. And if he's not part of it, then he's got no business asserting executive privilege.
Congressman Gowdy succeeded today in winning a vote to attach an amendment to the contempt order, calling the use of executive privilege, quote, out of order, late, not appropriate, invalid, and not credible, end quote. Congressman Gowdy is among our guests here tonight. The president's decision to invoke executive privilege in the final hours leading up to the committee's contempt of Congress vote sparked Republican charges of a cover-up and Democratic cries of foul. For more, we go now to Fox News Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry.
As he returned from the G20 summit in the middle of the night, President Obama personally approved an 11th-hour request from Attorney General Eric Holder to assert executive privilege for the first time of his presidency.
Why would the president claim executive privilege unless there was something very, very important that he felt should not be made known to this committee and possibly to the public?
Some of the heat on Holder suddenly shifting to the commander-in-chief.
So why is the president getting involved? And what does he know? And when did he know it about Fast and Furious? I wouldn't have ever asked that question before.
White House aides say the president is not blocking Justice Department documents relevant to Fast and Furious itself. He's shielding deliberations among his advisors over how to respond to investigations and media inquiries. While that's a privilege presidents in both parties have invoked, a former Clinton counsel says the White House should err on the side of disclosing more.
We're going to exert executive privilege. We'll fight about it for 6 months. We'll be accused of covering up, and then sooner or later we're going to turn over the documents anyway. Why don't we do it now rather than wait 6 months?
Executive privilege has been invoked 24 times since the Reagan days, with George W. Bush asserting it 6 times while Bill Clinton racked up 14. Although Republicans note some of those claims that did not include White House documents were overturned by courts. As a senator, Mr. Obama blasted President Bush for using the privilege to prevent Karl Rove from testifying in the U.S. attorney scandal.
You know, there's been a tendency on the part of this administration to try to hide behind executive privilege every time there's something a little shaky that's taking place.
A fresh opening for presumptive Republican nominee Mitt Romney's campaign to slam today's move, saying President Obama's pledge to run the most open and transparent administration in history has turned out to be just another broken promise.
Obama campaign officials responded that they're not going to take a lecture on transparency from Governor Romney, he of the offshore bank accounts and delayed tax returns. Lou?
And thank you, Ed Henry, Chief White House correspondent. Joining us now, the author of the amendment that passed today, stating that the executive privilege assertion isn't applicable to Fast and Furious documents being withheld by the Department of Justice. We're joined now by Congressman Trey Gowdy. member of both the House Oversight Committee and the House Judiciary Committee, and a leader of the investigation into Fast and Furious. Congressman, good to have you here. Let's turn first to the disclosure that 140,000 documents are at issue here, rather than what many of us thought were 70,000. And what looked like an admission, an agreement by the Attorney General as recently as yesterday that he could be forthcoming pending negotiations. Your reaction?
I'm not interested in negotiating with him, Lou. It's not a bridge tournament. It's not a used car we're buying. You have a dead Border Patrol agent, thousands of weapons with America's fingerprints on both sides of the border, hundreds of dead Mexican citizens. You know, the thing about Attorney General Holder is if you wait 24 hours, the number may change again. It's gone from 70,000 to 80 to now 140,000. They're issuing retractions almost as quickly as the New York Times on statements that they've made in front of other committees of Congress. So whether it's 140,000, whether it's 40,000, I don't care about the number. I care about the completeness of the discovery, the completeness of his compliance.
The completeness to this point is negligible. Would you say that's a fair construction?
It is de minimis, if I can borrow from borrow a legal term from another language. It's insufficient for me to answer your questions. Every time I'm privileged to come on your show, you ask me wonderful questions, most of which I can't answer because I haven't seen all the documents. This isn't politics. If it were politics, then I'd be smiling and claiming victory because we held the Attorney General in contempt of Congress. It's a sad day for me as a former prosecutor that we had to do this. We shouldn't have to do it.
I want to turn to the politics of this in just a moment, but first let's get to the amendment that you attached to the order today and the import of it, and which you also today, you declared either this president is part of it or he's not, and if he's not, there's no basis for the claim of executive privilege.
Well, it's tough to have it both ways, isn't it? The Attorney General says he's never discussed the matter with the President. The President said he knew nothing about it. I have no evidence the President drafted that false February 4th letter. I have no evidence the President approved wiretap applications. In fact, I'm quite convinced he did not. So if he knows nothing about Fast and Furious and he's had no conversations about it, why is he asserting executive privilege? What's privileged? What's been said to him that's privileged? So that represented something of a twist or a turn for the administration. Their position in the past had been, the President knows nothing about it, has nothing to do with it. You know, the subpoena was issued in October of 2011.
Right.
I used to try cases for a living. You don't wait until the day of trial to assert your defense. In fact, in most trials, if you wait this late, you're barred. You can't use your defense, whether it's alibi or mental health. Why he waited until the morning of the vote to assert something as significant as executive privilege, I think it speaks to how legally insufficient and curious this decision was.
Again, another retraction, as you alluded to, by the Attorney General from a statement that he had made, saying straightforwardly that Attorney General Michael Mukasey had been briefed about gun walking, and in that instance, in the Bush administration, in Operation Wide Receiver, which he again had to retract. Some of the things that he's had to retract, documents that have had to be withdrawn and then reasserted with accurate statements, they're actually very fundamental issues. And it's curious that these kinds of statements would occur because they are substantive and they are important.
Well, the February 4th letter is where I start. That was a pretty fundamental misrepresentation to a committee of Congress. It took 10 months for them to figure out that was wrong before they withdrew it. Now they're alleging that another Attorney General, make no mistake, Lou, that's their defense, which, by the way, stopped working in my house when my kids were 5, which is, well, other people are doing it, therefore it justifies me doing it. I mean, that's what he's trying to do with Mukasey and say, well, I'm not the only one who knew about gun walking. My point to that is bring everybody before us that knew about it. I don't care what party you're a member of. If you knew about gun walking, if you're bull moose, Republican, Democrat, come to Congress and tell us about it. But that has nothing to do with your failure to comply with a subpoena.
Yeah, and Congress, let's be straightforward here. This has become part of the talking points of the Democratic Party. It is no accident that I hear the same conflation between Operation Wide Receiver and Fast and Furious from Democratic surrogates as well as Democratic officials on this broadcast. Let's go to the politics of this. I would suggest when people are saying that the political gamesmanship, and Attorney General Holder was chief among them, saying this is about political gamesmanship, I would assert that you are pursuing this investigation despite the politics of it, because it is a high-risk proposition for the Republican Party in the Republican-led House of Representatives. Would you agree or not?
Yes, sir. I have never had a political conversation with a Republican or, frankly, a Democrat on oversight or judiciary. And believe it or not, Lou, when the committee is over, Republicans and Democrats sometimes go off to the side and discuss this when we're free from having to vote and talk the party line. It has nothing to do with politics. I don't know Brian Terry's politics. I don't know any of the law enforcement officers involved in Fast and Furious's politics. It is about respect for the rule of law and compliance with Congress's responsibility, constitutional responsibility to provide oversight. Now, in the world we live in, they want to say this is election year gimmicks. The only reason we're doing this in an election year, Lou, is because they didn't do it last year when they were supposed to. If they'd done it in 2011, you and I'd be talking about something else tonight. The only electioneering or gamesmanship that is being played now is their attempt to once again blame everything on George Bush.
Yeah. Well, Congressman, how does it end? Do you believe that there will be a political, if you will, settlement, that the White House will come to terms with the Speaker, with the Chairman, Congressman Darrell Issa, and Senator Grassley on the other side of the Hill?
Well, I had a conversation with Speaker Boehner today on the floor, and frankly, Lou, I thanked him for going forward, because I'm sure that there is resistance to doing it, but it's important to do it. I got to be honest with you, and this isn't, leadership may tell you something different. I'm speaking as a former prosecutor from South Carolina. I don't want anything other than the full complement of documents, because the next time I come on your show, if I'm privileged to do it, and we have half the documents, then you're going to ask me, what are you missing? What's in the other half? Why did you negotiate? Why did you capitulate? If this were political, I'd say, sure, give me half of it. Let's both go away happy. But we have a dead Border Patrol agent. We're going to have more people killed or injured with these weapons. I want all the documents, or give me a legal reason why you don't have to provide them, and it better be better than this last-minute, lame, legally insignificant executive privilege claim.
Do you find it, and this is my final question because we've gone well over, do you find it absolutely breathtaking that almost 15 months later, we still don't know who in the Justice Department authorized, approved, and initiated Operation Fast and Furious? We do not know who was responsible, and we do not have an accurate accounting of the communications amongst top national security officials, justice officials, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and other federal agencies that led to the tragedy of more than 200 deaths of Mexican citizens and the deaths of one, perhaps two, U.S. law enforcement officers.
Lou, it's a combination of infuriating and sadness. Sadness because Brian Terry's family and friends don't know any more about why he died and how he died than they did the night he died. Infuriating because I have higher expectations for the Department of Justice than this. So it's a combination, infuriated, sad, but also resolved. This is not going away. However long I have in Congress, I'm going to get the answers. I'm going to give them to you so you can give them to your viewers. This is not a political haggling match to me. We're not playing bridge. We're not buying a car. This is about justice. I will take all of it, or don't give me any of it.
Congressman, we appreciate you being with us. We thank you very much. Look forward to our next discussion.